Hello Proponomics people, and welcome to the longer form explainer video for my 4 pillars of property investment. So every Wednesday this year I'm going to be publishing a video that fits into my 4 pillars strategic framework series. So what is the 4 pillars? Well, it's a concept I first came up with officially in 2016, and it was something that developed as I heard more and more people say to me, the only things you need to be successful in property are the deals and the money. And I thought, this doesn't quite sit right with me. They're both obviously incredibly important. Of course they are. And you can't do it without both of those things. But that's not all there is. You've also got to be able to, in my opinion, operationalize this or deliver a particularly good product, turn something from what it could be, something with potential, into its best form finished product. And then also you've got to curate that asset over time. The asset management, looking after that asset for the life over which you own it, is also absolutely key. And I saw these two things, either one or the other, not going very well for other people who were exiting properties and selling them too cheaply for what they were. And these were the sort of opportunities I was finding. So I knew that these must be key skills. And those are pillars 3 and 4 of my 4 pillars. And the first 2 are indeed the deals and the money. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the framework now. This is just an introductory video. So for each of the 4 pillars, there are 7 sub-pillars also in there as well. So of the 7 sub-pillars, 3 are particularly entry-level style accessible sub-pillars. And then the other 4 are a little bit more complex. They need more education before you get involved with them. They need a bit more experience. I would say you probably wouldn't want to look at any of these, or certainly not too many of these, for your first deal, but these are things you get to grow into and do as time goes on, as you get more miles on the clock with your property experience. So if I go through my 4 pillars in turn just briefly, the first one is the supply pipeline. Where do the deals come from? And the accessible entry-level sub-pillars of that are estate agents and your relationship with them, auctions and auction houses, and using those in order to pick up properties potentially in volume. And then also property sources. Can be a bit of a dirty word, but I've got lots of thoughts on sources. I've worked with many of them and I've had lots of success using sources. And then on the slightly more advanced side, we've got direct to vendor as a way of getting deals. We've got joint ventures as a potential way of working through deals. That's not the only context in which I'm going to talk about joint ventures in this video series. We've also got liquidation, receivership, administration, disposals, things like that. And then we've also got portfolio acquisition, which is another thing I've been lucky enough to be able to pull off a number of times. So then on to the second pillar, that is indeed the money, the financial structure. So what are the entry-level ones? Well, there's nothing easier than having the money in the bank yourself now. You're not necessarily going to need to pay anybody for that money, although of course you do have to think about the opportunity cost of not investing it in something perhaps less risky or perhaps less effort than property can be. Then the next pretty obvious one, entry-level one, is the bank's money. Hopefully you're an attractive proposition to a lender and you can raise some what they call senior debt against property assets. And then the next one is the vendor's assets. So what do I mean when I'm talking about that? I'm talking about things like rent to rent. I do believe it can be an entry-level strategy, especially for people who haven't got lots of money behind them. And then the more advanced ones on the financial pillar, we've got my money tomorrow. So the concept of borrowing from the future, from future incomes or from future capital distributions. We've got other people's money. I think you should be more advanced before you're going ahead with this with other people's money. I think you should treat it more carefully than your own. Then we've got the bridgers' money, so bridging or fast financing lenders. And again, I think you need an element of experience and sophistication before you take on the bridgers. It can be a fantastic way of funding property deals, but if you get it wrong, it can be extremely painful. And then the vendor's money. So vendor finance, not easy to pull off on your first deal, but I pulled off a number of vendor finance deals, and I'll also talk about those when we get to that video in the series. Then we've got the optimization stage. So like I say, taking something that is below its full potential and making it into its best kind of asset. So first one is pretty much DIY, do the job yourself. You can use that to learn. I don't advise doing that again and again, but of course that is how some people get some edge in property. And then small contractors, when we're starting out, we're looking at smaller jobs, individual flats or houses. We're probably looking for contractors who ideally aren't VAT registered. They're going to be smaller. They're going to take more management. I'll talk about that. And then a project manager, which I believe is accessible to anybody, even on their first job. And I think it might be a good idea to pay for that project manager and their services, just so you can learn from the way that they manage a project properly, rather than the way you or I might manage it if we didn't know what we were doing. And then on the more advanced side of optimization, we've got the JV partners again. So this is a slightly different context here. I'll be talking about a pretty classic JV here, where we might be talking about one of you is the investor, or perhaps finding the deals. The other is the builder and delivering the deals. Then we've got paperwork. So this is where things get more advanced, and it's not just about taking out a bathroom or a kitchen and making it look beautiful in that way. It's about sorting out legal problems, which can be very lucrative. We've got larger contractors to deal with as we start to look at bigger developments and conversions and things like that. A different ball game, different set of things you need to contend with. And then we've also got the commercial side of things. So how do you make a commercial property as good as it can be? That might be a very, very different way of doing it from the way that you make a residential property the best it can be. And then the final pillar, last but not least, the ongoing management, as I say. So again, we've got DIY on the ongoing management. Lots of people do that. My contention would be, why did you not learn the last time when you were doing it yourself on refurbs? I don't think it's the way forward, and I'll talk about why that is, but it can be done. Then we've got letting agents, again, accessible to anybody, but how do you select a good one? What process do you go through in order to ensure you're working with the right letting agents? And what else can you do with letting agencies? And then friends and family. Again, see lots of people do it. Varying degrees of success. Can be good in the right sort of team as long as everybody knows what their roles are and knows what they're doing. And then on the more advanced side, we've got the portfolio manager. So this might well be, if you've got a portfolio, you can afford one person who sits underneath you in that business to oversee everything that goes on in the portfolio, and anything to do with the performance of an asset would be their job. Now, a portfolio manager might be able to manage up to 1,000 properties, because they're still going to have letting agents underneath them, to be clear. So we're talking serious scale when we're talking portfolio managers. You might also have a business manager. So that might be if you've got other trading businesses as part of your property business portfolio of property businesses, your property business group, then you might have a business manager who runs the business side. Perhaps they do some of the sales for you. Perhaps they look after some of the marketing. Perhaps they're looking after the financials. Number of other things they might be doing. Then you've got HMO specialist agents, and I'll talk about those and why I think really you still need to be a bit more advanced before you're going straight into HMO management. And then, of course, your final level, really, the business owner. So the business owner is ultimately a shareholder, not an executive director in your group. And I'll talk about that when we get to the right video. So there's 28 sub-pillars there in total. So I hope you're looking forward to the next series of videos. It's going to take over 6 months to get them done. I'd love a bit of feedback. And if you're listening to this, please could you like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because that's what helps the channel grow and it helps me out a lot. Thank you very much.